Hi, all. I have a really cool interview today. Before I tell you about the guest, I just wanted to share a little bit why I wanted to have this interview on this channel. Some years of my life, I struggled with depression, with overweight, with like a lot of things that I had no idea how to get rid of, basically. It went away when I started taking care of my health. It literally, like the depression, for example, it went away. Of course, I worked with a therapist, which helped a lot, but just exercising, adding yoga, breathing practices, and all these things that connect you with your body helped me a lot. And I had no idea that this is something you can do by just adding those things to your routine. It was like a really interesting thing for me to find out. And I shared this journey on this channel, and I'll leave a link here if you want to look at the video. Maybe it's going to be beneficial to you too. But basically, this new guest that I'm going to talk about really quick before she joins the call, her name is Dr. Maria, and she's a doctor of chiropractic as well as master of functional medicine. She also studied nutrition. Her skill set is amazing. She has her own practice, and she doesn't only help you cure the disease, she does it from this root cause disease approach. She understands first, why do you have this disease? What's the root of the disease? How can we cure that rather than just like stopping the symptoms that you're having? So yeah, and she's very spiritual also. She teaches yoga for the past 10 years. She's a friend of mine, and I thought that this video will be very beneficial to everyone, especially to people that live in the US, because we are so disconnected with our bodies. The food that we eat, most of it is so toxic. And in this day and age, you just have to know how to choose what's best for you and how to stay healthy. So welcome to this podcast. And yeah, let's talk to Maria.
Maria, hello.
Hello, Karyna.
Thank you for coming to my podcast interview. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself?
Yes, absolutely. First and foremost, thank you for having me. We did an interview podcast last week in a different language, and we had so much fun and provided such, great information between the two of us that I am really thankful and excited to be here again and, target a different audience with a different language to, again, just share, this
Totally.
world of me, us, for this podcast. So my name is Dr. Maria ʟᴇᴛ'ᴱ, and I'm a doctor of chiropractic medicine and a functional medicine specialist. So what do I mean when I say I'm a functional medicine specialist? I have a master's degree in functional medicine and nutrition. And I should add on to that I'm also a yoga instructor. I've been teaching yoga for a little over 10 years now. In my services and my care that I provide to my patients, I really attempt to provide this really whole body mind approach from the different degrees and the certifications that I hold.
I love that. Can you tell a little bit more about, because I loved how we did that on our other interview, a little bit more about the difference, like what's the difference between you and our regular doctor, like a family doctor that we go to? Like, why do people need to talk to you and doctors like that?
Yes, I would love to. I would love to explain that. So, in the US specifically, I feel like the world of medicine is a bit divided into allopathic medicine and what we would qualify as alternative medicine, holistic medicine. Alternative medicine is honestly not my most favorite term, and I'll explain why. So let's talk a little bit about allopathic medicine. And that would bring me back to how I chose this path, actually, to functional medicine and preventative medicine, alternative medicine, so many different words that I can use for it, right? I entered this path of medicine as a scribe at an emergency department in Milwaukee. I thought, this is what I really want to do. I really want to help people. And I know that I want to be able to help people doing something in the medical field. So I thought I'll go and work at an emergency department and see what's out there, so to say. As a scribe, I would document everything that a provider would do throughout the visit, throughout the 8-hour shift, right, at the emergency department, and throughout every patient visit. And I soon learned that around 90% of patients presenting to the emergency department were aggravations of chronic, keyword, chronic conditions. The other 5% needed to be admitted to the hospital, and the other 5%, yes, had, to have their life saved. For example, an overdose, or there was a very interesting case of a woman giving birth and she actually was not aware that she was pregnant. So those kind of, extreme kind of cases. And I thought, wow, okay, so we have plenty of providers, amazing providers, genius providers who know how to do procedures, surgeries, prescribe medications. However, working at the emergency department, I saw that we have a lack of providers who treat, take care of, heal chronic conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And what do I mean by an aggravation of chronic condition? For example, a patient coming in with an aggravated rash. She's had a rash for years, and every time it gets aggravated, she doesn't know where to go. So she presents to the emergency department. Or a patient with abdominal pains. Chronic abdominal pain, aggravated, present to emergency department, so on and so forth. So those kind of cases, chronic headaches, aggravation of headache, emergency department. That's what I primarily saw on my shifts when I was working as a scribe.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to, seek out the field of medicine where I would be able to, or my job would be to help those people, patients who present with chronic conditions. And my goal was to help patients not ever really get to the aggravation of their chronic conditions, so that they never really have to end up in the emergency department, for those reasons.
Yeah.
And I realized that, okay, there's naturopathic medicine, there is chiropractic medicine, there's functional medicine. And I just, once I learned of the different fields of medicine that take care of chronic conditions, I chose this path to be a doctor of chiropractic, and on top of that, get my master's degree in functional medicine. And to answer your question, right, to sum it all up, what is the difference between your regular Western medicine, which is labeled as allopathic, and then, the preventative functional medicine? The difference is that the allopathic medicine, primarily providers are taught how to take care of acute conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I had an appendicitis. I had the best experience at the hospital, an amazing surgery. It was all wonderful. However, when I had severe acne for years and years and years, I went to different providers, and it was, okay, let's try this medication, and let's try this medication and this medication, and nothing really resolved it. So it was my path. It was also through my own healing journey, right?
Right.
That I found this path to functional medicine to then address the root cause of my problems, of my acne, which was actually hormonal and digestive health. So once those root causes were addressed, functional medicine is huge in addressing root causes, then my face cleared up.
Right. That's awesome. So basically, when someone comes to you for a consultation and wants to work with you, you try not to just, tell them, here's the pill and you won't have symptoms, but you're trying to get to the root of the problem and figure it out.
And I would love to share how I do that. So the initial consultation is actually 3 hours. Me, a functional medicine provider, is actually 3 hours, right? And when I went to see my new primary care provider, which she is awesome, I completely loved her. But that initial consultation was only 20 minutes, right? How much within that system, how much can you truly learn about a patient in 20 to 30 minutes? Not a lot. So during the 3 hours, the good part of that consultation, I would say 2 hours, is interview. So we dig deep into the health history, and I look for when anxiety might have started, when abdominal discomfort might have started, right? I look for root causes within lifetime, rather, of that person up to the point, them presenting to see me. Then I go into nutrition focused physical exam. And after that, after I have all of that information, including their very extensive intake paperwork that they have to submit, before they come to see me, I order labs. And this is where the treatment begins, basically. And, I only base my treatment off of physical exam findings and labs, right? I need concrete information, which is completely evidence-based, right? Because if, for example, someone comes to see me and upon just doing the interview, I think to myself, okay, they're probably deficient in vitamin D. They probably might benefit from, or maybe they're estrogen dominant. So how about I'll throw an herb there to increase their progesterone? Well, that's just guessing. And I really don't like guessing. I'm really big into let's do labs. Let's be completely evidence-based. And once I have the labs, then I work on nutrition and supplements only as per labs, because sometimes I'll have patients ask me after our initial consultation, I'm not feeling great. What can you, do you have any ideas as to what we can do now before I have the labs? And I really don't like to suggest anything at all before I have the labs, because the answers are usually, most of the time, they're hidden within the lab work and the history. All of the time, actually, it's lab work and history. That's it.
Right. And I remember we were discussing that. I was asking you about like multivitamins, and if there are some, because there are a lot of articles on the internet as well as videos on TikTok, Instagram, where people are just saying, okay, these are the vitamins that you have to take if you're over 30. These are the vitamins that every woman needs to take and stuff like that. So I like the approach of actually going and doing your lab before you commit to some vitamins. So question here, how soon, because like this is not taught at school, we don't have any basic education about any of it, right? About preventative medicine. So how early can a person go to you? Can a child go to you? And does a child need to go to you if they don't have any problems?
That's a wonderful question. Actually, this morning I had a follow-up with one of my patients who I'm seeing via her mom, actually, because she's a toddler. So she was having significant gastrointestinal discomfort, extensive distension in the abdomen, and bloating. And yes, I ordered labs on her, and then as per the labs and her history, created a treatment plan. And upon this follow-up, she's actually doing a lot better. Pretty much the abdominal distension resolved, and the bloating is only very occasional, related to certain foods. So yes, absolutely. Functional medicine is truly for anyone between, like a toddler age to elderly.
Perfect. Yeah, that's amazing. Okay. And then since we're talking about like preventive medicine and kids, are there any things that people can start doing right now to kind of like have a healthier lifestyle before they even go to the doctor?
Absolutely. And that's actually what I recommend, to my patients after the initial consultation, right? So I'm not going to prescribe any supplements or even any dietary recommendations, but I will talk about the fundamental aspects of health. And the fundamental aspects of health is everything that we do on daily basis, right? It's our habits. Our habits can either lead us to a good mental state, body feeling energized, or they can lead us to disease. And very interesting, you asked that question today, because I also had a follow-up again this morning with a patient who hasn't gotten to take their supplements yet. However, they started doing the fundamental activities that I've recommended, they change within their lifestyle and they're feeling a lot better. Like the energy is a lot better, the concentration is a lot better. What are those things? Well, how about we start from the morning and kind of, walk through the day. So in the morning, I personally, I do follow you on social media, and I love your stories, especially, I love all your stories and the ones where you share your morning routine. I feel like it's so healthy. It's so fundamentally healthy, right? So from what I understand, where you wake up, and then I don't know if you wanted to talk a little about, I'm not sure. Yes.
Sure. I started doing that actually when I got depressed in 2018,
Wow.
some time ago. Yeah. And I had to do something to change my life, basically. And I started reading a lot of books. Some of them were about health. Some of them were more about your mindset, including like John Cahill's books and stuff like that. And one of the things was meditation. So I started implementing meditation, including like at least 5 minutes in the morning, where I can either breathe and like clear my thoughts in silence, or I have an app that I subscribe to where they have guided meditations. So I do that, and then if I have time and if I don't have yoga scheduled later in the day, I do yoga. Also, at least a quick yoga, because I love to sleep and I don't have much time in the morning. I started doing cold plunges, but that also depends on a cycle, because you can't obviously as a woman do cold plunges 30 days a month as a man can. So I started doing those, and I can see like drastic shift in my like mood. I don't have that many mood swings.
I love that.
Interesting.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. And there's so much research in terms of what meditation does to our brains, does to our, brain waves. So starting your day with mindful breathing, mindful meditation, and light movement will already set you up for a pretty successful day, because what happens within our bodies when we meditate and move, we connect to our bodies, we feel our bodies, right? Instead of jumping out of bed and going for a cup of coffee and disconnecting with our bodies and, looking at our phones and the news and everything like that, further disconnecting from our bodies, we're connecting to our bodies and seeing, okay, how do I feel today? What does my body need today? Right. Also with movement, you're improving your circulation. You're optimizing the flow of your lymphatic fluid. So you're supporting your immune system even with that. And the only other thing that you do that I would love to add, I feel, because I've seen it, is, water, hydration, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like so natural that I forget that. Yeah.
I know, totally. So yes, hydration is super important, especially throughout the day and especially in the morning. Why? Because water is a natural medium for all of the biochemical reactions that happen within our cells. And here I would love to mention, what is health, right? Health starts on a cellular level. When we have healthy cells, properly hydrated, we have healthy organs. When we have healthy organs, we have healthy systems. Healthy systems lead to healthy organism, right? So you can start right from the morning. Another thing that I would love to mention about water is that it is important to consume water with electrolytes, whether it's, shot of lemon juice even, or half a shot of that lemon juice, which is high in potassium, a little bit of sodium, because drinking water with electrolytes helps with absorption of that water inside of the cells. And I would say that it's specifically important to drink water with electrolytes in the morning, because upon waking up, you obviously don't have any food, you don't have any, electrolytes within your stomach that you could have potentially, or those minerals that you could have consumed from foods. So you're waking up fasting. So drinking that water with electrolytes will just really help your body absorb that water into the cells.
I love that.
Yes, absolutely.
Also, here to add, I saw, oh my goodness, there was a reel, Jay Shetty's reel, where
Uh-huh.
he posted, it was kind of funny, but the idea was that when you pick up your phone, like when you wake up, there's only like one or two people in the room. But if you pick up your phone and you see all those text messages, Instagram posts, all those things, it's kind of like you're letting all these people in your room in the morning, in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like, you don't do that usually, right? You don't open your door and like, come on in, everyone. But you do that with your phone, which is like, why would you do that? So I kind of like the approach.
I love that. Right. If, a whole bunch of people walked into my room, into my apartment, let alone in the morning, I would totally be overstimulated.
Right.
And that's actually what, happens to a lot of us, that we're just overstimulated, disconnected right from the morning.
Okay. So yeah, I love those kind of like necessary steps that everyone needs to do in the morning. And whatever your approach on that, I was reading this book, Fast Like a Girl. And the author, she was talking about like how fasting helps not necessarily like cure diseases, but maybe prevent some of the diseases. And you can do like aggressive fastings, which are like 24, 36 and more hours. But there are some which everyone can basically do in between, like whenever you sleep, after you finished your dinner, and then before you start your breakfast. Those can be like 14 to 16 hours. And she's also talking about the benefit of it, not only like losing your weight if you're overweight, but also like cleaning your cells, and all those like healthy stuff that you can also do with fasting.
Yes, fasting is really great, and there's a good amount of research now that's coming out in terms of training to fasting. One of the things that fasting does is it does increase cell apoptosis, or cell death of the cells that are potentially mutated. Additionally, fasting also helps with, for example, we have a sick cell that's starting to malfunction a little, right? Fasting does help to make that cell, to healthify that cell. So I read this one study where I believe it was 16 to 20 hour of a fast. And what they noticed actually within that time frame of fasting is that cell apoptosis decreased because cell rehabilitation back into health increased.
Right. That's really cool.
Right, because then the body is not necessarily concerned of constantly having to absorb, digest foods. The body can focus on, the cells within itself and see, okay, what do we need to fix here? The only thing that I would like to add in terms of fasting is, especially if you're doing, 24 to 32 to 36 hour fasts or 72-hour fasts, I would highly recommend going into those fasts knowing your blood parameters, so that you're not deficient in, say, iron or B vitamins or any other minerals or vitamins. That way, when you're fasting, you're not going to go into further deficiency, right? Because how do our bodies make cells? Well, with the help of macronutrients, protein specifically, as well as micronutrients or vitamins and minerals. And actually, I have had patients in my practice that used to do fasting quite a lot and were on vegetarian diets, or thinking that they're leading these extremely healthy lifestyles. And they would fast a lot, and they ended up getting sick a lot too. Just your regular colds and flus, because how does our body fight colds and flus? Well, it's our immune system. What does our immune system feed on? Macronutrients and micronutrients that we consume. So there's a lack of that. Fasting will put you at a further lack of those nutrients and potentially deficiency, which can lead to problems. So just make sure that you don't have any significant deficiencies.
I like that. Okay, perfect. So speaking about those other like key things that we can do on a daily basis and that our viewers can do, we were talking about kids and like the whole food industry. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that. And share like when you go grocery shopping, because like a few years ago, maybe more already, like 5 years ago, I had no, like I never looked at the ingredients. I had no idea what I'm buying. Was the difference between all those hundreds of eggs that you can find in the store. So what, like, how do we choose the right produce for us, and what else can we do on a daily basis from the food perspective to make our lives healthier?
Yes, absolutely. So I love how you started your question, with kids, right? Because who needs the most support when it comes to nutrition that we consume? It's kids, because they're growing. Like, at least as us as adults, we're not growing. We're not growing tissues. Our brain is not growing. Kids, they're growing. So they need a lot of good support when it comes to nutrition. And unfortunately, so I also teach nutrition at a college. And a few weeks ago, I was discussing it with my students. That as per research, unfortunately, over 50% of kids in the US have cereal in the morning. What does cereal have? Primarily simple carbs. And a lot of those cereals are going to be filled with sugars, let alone sugars. What about colors? Red 40. Some of the colors have been banned, actually, right? Because finally, we found an association between a certain food additive and that, okay, fine, it actually does cause a toxic body. So thankfully, we're slowly working on that industry of food additives, at least. But yes, unfortunately, if your kid has cereal for breakfast, and then it's primarily going to be simple carbs, so really fast sugars, what happens then within the body of that little human being? Well, the blood sugar rises. What does our body use sugar for? Our body uses sugar to create energy. It's called glycolysis, right? As the first step of the energy production, or ATP production in the body. So let's think this scenario through. You feed, your little one a cereal with sugar. Sure, you add some milk, which is protein. That's good. Hopefully, it's not going to be non-fat or reduced fat. And I'm all for whole fat. So at least there are going to be some healthy fats involved as well. But that sugar will really interfere with attention, because try eating, a piece of cake, or like we were saying in the last interview, right? Try having Red Bull and then going and listening to, like you said, a really boring lecture. How do you really think that you can truly pay a lot of attention when there's so much sugar and energy in your body that all you want to do is just jump and run around?
Right. Yeah.
So, yes, when it comes to food, especially with kids, I would just be very mindful of making sure to include protein as a primary source of, the meal in the morning, fat as a secondary, and carbs as a tertiary source. And then to answer the second part of your question, how do we choose foods? How do we shop for foods? Well, ideally, we want to avoid foods that are, especially fruits and vegetables that are not organic, because be sure that if your fruit or vegetable that you're eating is not labeled as organic, it is going to have pesticides and fungicides, one of which is glyphosate, for example. And how much glyphosate do we need on a daily basis to sustain life? 0. We don't need any.
Right.
And some people doubt this concept of, okay, do organic foods actually does it make sense, or are they mislabeled? Yes, they are controlled. To be an organic farmer, you have to have regulations. You will get tested. Your soil will get tested. And I know farmers like that. And they're always, not necessarily concerned because they already are an organic farm, but they, throughout the year, they're just very careful. If they have to use a pesticide or a fungicide, they're very careful. Like, okay, this is the amount that I can use. And if it doesn't help, well, unfortunately, I'm not going to have, a certain vegetable or fruit that year. So yes, it's controlled. More than that, you can even see, like, try buying cucumbers that are organic and cucumbers that are non-organic. And you'll see the ones that are organic, they'll go bad pretty fast.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Same with berries and all those other produce. Yep.
Exactly. Yes. And staying away from processed foods as much as you can. Or there are, certain apps that you can use to at least scan those foods and see, okay, how bad are they for my bodies? But honestly, you can just, if you haven't been reading the ingredients yet, just start reading the ingredients on the foods. And if it's a huge list of things on there that you don't even know what they mean, just probably don't buy it.
Yeah, I was yesterday. I went to Walgreens to pick up a new humidifier, which we were also discussing in our last podcast. And I'm doing this no sugar thing, no added sugar for 30 days. And I was like, and there are a lot of chocolates. And I'm like, oh my God, let me scan a few. Maybe some of them don't have added sugar, like 95% of cocoa, whatever. And there were 2 chocolate bars that didn't have added sugar, but they had all those sweeteners, which are not organic. And Yuka rated it like 15 out of 100. So yeah, I love Yuka and all those apps that can tell you what are the ingredients, because when you're reading that huge list, you have no idea what that is.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, to add on to the added sugars, so one of the added sugars, especially in Diet Coke, is aspartame. So most honestly, if you do drink Coke and if you're picking between regular and diet, probably, unless you're diabetic and you have a lot going on, in which case you shouldn't be drinking Coke at all. But aspartame is very toxic. At least like sucrose, which is regular table sugar, is not toxic per se, but aspartame is actually toxic.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Okay, and from our grocery shopping list, how do we, because we're also talking about what is the right way to choose meat? What's the difference between grass-fed, organic makes sense, right? We should aim for organic, but looking at those eggs, for example, there are organic, cage-free, organic, some other type of eggs, same with meat, grass-fed, corn finished and stuff like that. So what is the difference and how do we choose the right type of meat, for example?
Yes, that's an amazing question that I would love to share. So corn-fed meat and grass-fed meat is going to taste completely different, right? Specifically, when we're talking about corn-fed versus grass-fed, what I'm most concerned about is omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. So what we see in corn-fed beef is that omega-6, which is a pro-inflammatory omega or fatty acid, which means that our body does need it to an extent, but doesn't need a lot of it, right? Because our body uses that omega-6 to create pro-inflammatory molecules such as prostaglandins and cytokines that increase inflammation in the body. So we want a really healthy omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. My favorite omega-6 to omega-3 ratio is 1-1, right? They balance each other out. But you can go as far as 4-1 or 3-1, meaning 4 to 3 omega-6 to 1 omega-3s is still considered healthy. So when we're talking about corn-fed beef, yes, it's going to taste, it might taste better depending on what kind of taste you prefer. It might be a little softer to chew. However, omega-6 will be higher. I believe it is 18 omega-6 to 1 omega-3s. Now, when we're talking about grass-fed meat, that ratio decreases significantly. So 5-1 or 4-1 is that ratio of a grass-fed beef. And I know you've mentioned, grass-fed, corn finished. Well, if it's corn finished, I would not necessarily buy it, because if it's grass-fed, it's going to be more expensive, right? If it's, corn finished, how long did they feed that cow corn? First of all, is my first question, right? Was it grass-fed for a couple of months and then corn finished? Even if it was corn finished for a month, how fast can our blood markers change? I can tell you very fast. I recheck labs every 6 to 2 months. And I can tell you that with changes to our food intake, with addition of certain supplements, as per the labs, within, 6 weeks to 2 months, there are significant results, right? So that cholesterol can change that fast. That omega-6 to omega-3 ratio can change that fast. So grass-fed is what I would primarily really encourage everyone to buy, so that we decrease inflammation in our bodies, unnecessary inflammation.
Right. Okay. And same, I don't remember if we actually touched on that in our last interview. Fish. How do you choose fish? Because there is a lot of like Costco and other stores. If you want to buy salmon, most of it is like farm raised salmon, which is, as I understand, dyed, so it's not even the right color. Not even talking about whatever is inside of it, right? So how do we choose food, and how do we, whenever we're choosing food, how do we measure how much of it can we eat? Because I know that some certain types of fish contain mercury, and that's not healthy if we get a lot of it.
Yes. So the gold rule for that is the smaller the fish, the less mercury it will have.
Interesting.
So yeah, right. So like anchovies are going to be really good. Sardines are going to be really good. Lobsters are also good. Crab legs, they generally do not have any heavy metals, as well as shrimp, I believe.
What about this round things? What's the name of it?
Calamari. Yes.
And no, not the calamari.
Squid.
Which one?
Squid.
Nope.
Mussels.
Mussels.
Oysters.
Yes.
Wait, mussels.
Mussels. Right, mussels. Yes.
Yeah, mussels generally shouldn't have any heavy metals either.
Okay.
Yeah, so mussels and oysters I absolutely love. They are extremely high in certain minerals such as zinc, so they're very, very healthy for you, and a good amount of protein. Shark, I would avoid. Shark is going to be a large fish. It's going to have a lot of heavy metals. Tuna, I would avoid. Not necessarily avoid, right? Just keep it balanced. For example, having tuna as a treat once a month. If you're having tuna on a weekly basis, then very likely you are consuming the heavy metals and storing them in your body. If you're having tuna or shark once in a while, your body has the time to get rid of those heavy metals, which actually, fun fact, one of the best ways to get rid of heavy metals from your body is sweating. So exercising and sweating, yoga, sauna, really good.
Nice.
It doesn't cost anything, right?
Right.
But really good way to get rid of those heavy metals.
Really cool. Okay. What about other types of fish that we buy at the grocery store, like salmon? It's like a medium size, not that big as a shark, but at the same time, not as small as sardines.
Right. Salmon will have some, but it's still not going to be as bad as tuna. Mm-hmm. And salmon, obviously, wild caught is going to be the best. However, I've seen it a couple of times now at stores where they're labeling salmon as farm raised but organic. There isn't enough research on the quality of that fish yet, but sometimes I'm just really craving that fatty fish. And if I do want to buy farm raised, then I'll just go for like organic farm raised, hoping that they don't add too many food colorings or anything like that into that fish.
Mm-hmm. Okay, makes sense. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then when we're choosing eggs, for example, you can also kind of see like if it's cage-free, range-free, cage-free. What's the difference? I don't remember. But basically, the main difference, whatever the correct term is, that they spend some time on the grass or they're just like stuck in a cage, right?
Right. I'm not sure if you've noticed the difference, but for example, if you've experimented with this, you bought your regular white eggs and then you bought, organic, cage-free eggs, potentially grass-fed. Mm-hmm. Then do you notice the difference in the yolk, the color of the yolk?
Yes.
It's huge, right? And it tastes different.
Yeah.
Meaning that it has more nutrients. That's it, right? Different nutrients, different vitamins do have different colors. Mm-hmm. So they can add a pigment, so to say, into the food. So that's a big difference than when you're consuming just a plain white egg, well, how many nutrients are you getting versus when you're consuming an egg? And also, right, the ethical aspect of it, a chicken that's been treated well
Right.
versus the one that's kind of just like stuck there. So both for health wise and ethically, it's just much better to I can't even say pay extra. So you know how everyone started saying, oh, eggs are so expensive, eggs are raising in price. And I was telling my patients at a time, I buy organic cage-free eggs and the price is the same. Like they were expensive, they rebate, like, they were $7, maybe they're $7.50 now.
Yeah. Yep.
So
yeah.
When you're shopping organic, ethically raised, ethically sourced, you're unlikely going to notice a huge price difference.
Yeah. And then like from those eggs, how many a day? Because I also heard somewhere that you can't actually eat eggs every day, that it's not healthy. Is there like a specific number of eggs that you can eat daily? Or it's a myth, kind of?
So great question, right? Because eggs have a certain amount of protein per egg. And it is true that an individual, depending on age as well as weight and goals, nutrition goals or fitness goals, should be consuming anywhere from 0.8 to actually 2 grams per kilogram of protein per day. So if you're eating a whole bunch of eggs, well, are you over consuming, the amount of protein? Now, the fact that eggs are, or I should say, it is a myth that eggs aren't healthy. They can become unhealthy in one instance, I would say primarily. That is when we cook an egg and we expose the egg yolk to air. That's how we get cholesterol oxides that can actually rise the bad or the LDL cholesterol. That is not the correct term for it, but just the small cholesterol, which is the LDL cholesterol, which can clog arteries. That happens when cholesterol, there's, good amount of cholesterol oxides, which again happens when you expose the egg yolk to air. So if you're having, say, a boiled egg, chances of eggs raising cholesterol are very, it's just not going to really happen.
Interesting. I had no idea. I'm glad I asked. Okay.
I know, like how cool.
Right. Okay. I guess that's, we kind of like talked about all of the things that you can do daily to improve your health.
I would say I do want to add one more activity. Right. So of course, physical exercise is going to be important. And for when I'm working on a physical exercise routine with my patients, the number one goal when, I work with patients is I make sure that their path to healing, to optimizing their health is enjoy. They enjoy it, right? So when we're talking about physical activity, if you don't like exercising, chances are you probably haven't found an exercise that you really enjoy. So whether it's dancing or yoga or Pilates, and some of my patients who, are just starting their path to exercising, I ask them to find yoga studios, take like a few free classes, find Pilates, find a gym, and just like shop around and see what type of exercise brings you the most joy. And of course, sleep is going to be so important.
Yeah.
So not so much even sleep as in of itself, but deep sleep. So studies are coming out that if an individual gets at least 15% of deep sleep or more, I would say anything healthy is between, or optimal, right, is between 17 to 20. That's when I personally feel really good if I've gotten that, good 17 to 20% of deep sleep, as deep sleep is very restorative for our nervous system. And actually those individuals who are getting less than 15%, the risk of Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, unfortunately increase. So making sure that you have a really good bedtime routine and going to bed at, an optimal time for you, sleeping for 8 to 9 hours. It's pretty general, and I don't like generalizations, but this generalization I feel like is pretty good, is going to decrease your risk of developing many different diseases long term.
So how do we get to like deep sleep?
It all depends on your nervous system as well, right? So for someone who has more heightened nervous system, they might struggle with deep sleep, or more of a stimulated nervous system. They might really struggle with it. For example, for myself, I kind of have to work hard on my bedtime routine to wind down before I go to bed. And if I've done all those activities, which depending on how stimulating my day was, sometimes it's actually like taking a bath, reading a book, and then going to sleep, and dimming the lights everywhere and no exposure to blue light. I see that when I do all of those activities, then I have a pretty good amount of deep sleep. And deep sleep does vary through the night. So I do have a few devices that measure my deep sleep, and I'll kind of come out of deep sleep, go into a different stage of sleep. Answer your question, how do we get to a deep sleep and get a good quality, is to wind down before we go to bed and reduce your exposure to the blue light, because that does decrease the production of melatonin.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I was doing that without actually knowing that it helped. So good to know that it does.
Yes. And I'm sorry, I really want to mention this. I love that you say that, right? Because again, just knowing you as a person and following you on Instagram, I feel like you're really in tune with your body. And that is a really big goal for me as a provider, providing my services. My goal is to help my patients befriend their bodies so that they know what they need and they don't need me as a guide anymore, right? They just know that, what, I need this or I need that. And sometimes, like when you're really in tune, you can even feel that you're lacking a certain nutrient.
Mm-hmm.
So really interesting how that works. It's wonderful.
Totally. Yeah. Okay. So from some other things that we can add to our daily routines, we were discussing dogs, for example.
Yes.
So can we talk about, because like when I was growing up in Belarus, I was bringing like a lot of animals from the streets. Like we've had cats, dogs, rabbits, a lot of different animals. A rat. I had a rat called George. Yeah, and yeah, he was very cute. So, like when I was growing up in Belarus, my mom was always telling me that animals are actually very dirty. And they're very bad for you. They have a lot of parasites. I don't know how this is in English, and like all those stuff. So is that true or not really? Like, should we have dogs or should Miles go somewhere now?
Go back to the shelter. I know he's adopted. No, please keep Miles. He looks great in your stories.
I know. He's super cute.
Oh, hi, buddy. Yes, dogs are amazing, right? And so first of all, they're really good pets in general. They're really good for our mental health because there has actually been an association between pets increasing the levels of oxytocin in our body. Right? Because of, hugging and petting your pet, you're getting kind of like the same effect that you would when you're holding your kid. Probably you would feel that same way. I don't know. I don't have kids, but it's the same hormone that gets released. Mm-hmm. So that's good news. That's really affects our mental health in a really good way. The other aspect, which is an even bigger aspect, is pets train our immune system. So there have been studies that tell us that kids who grow up in a household with pets have a decreased risk of developing autoimmune conditions, asthma, and generally have a pretty good immune system. Because the immune system is there to fight disease, right? And if you're growing up in a pretty sterile environment, then you're not training your immune system. How do we train our immune system? Well, anytime we're exposed to a virus or a bacteria, we have this part of our immune system, which is kind of like a memory immune system. It remembers. And anytime then we encounter that same disease, that same bacteria or pathogen, whatever, again, our body is going to secrete cells that will know how to fight that specific virus or bacteria. So for kids, really good to grow up in a household with pets. And to add on to that, I actually, this week I was talking to a patient, and he has allergies, and he reported that when he and his wife got a dog, his allergies significantly decreased.
Really
So
cool.
it can be even very helpful to adults as well. And, you know, I was talking about the immune system and training the immune system with my students as well. And one of my students who's studying psychology, actually, he mentioned this great study where there were two set of, trees growing up in different conditions. One set of trees was growing up in really good conditions, lots of sun and not a lot of wind, just amazing conditions, lots of humidity. The other set of trees was growing in a really, not necessarily good conditions. So like storm, good amount of sun, but a lot of wind, a lot of rain, and what we would call harsh conditions. And whenever these trees would get hit with a storm, they'd survive. The other trees, when they got hit with their first storm, they didn't survive, they died. I know, trees and people, it's different, but at least I just want to kind of mention this example, because in terms of just training the immune system is kind of like that. Like the more we train it, the more we expose it, the stronger it will be, the more memory of different viruses, bacteria, and pathogens it will have.
Yeah, I like the example. Okay. Yeah, thank you for sharing. So Miles, you're staying.
Yay! I guess my dog's staying as well.
Right?
Oh, and can I just mention,
Yeah.
I'm really, really big on adoption. And I do want to mention this, so we adopted, a dog in August. Purebreds, that's not necessarily healthy for animals, you guys, right? It's kind of like inbreeding within the same family, right? You're going to get exposed. You're going to get this very similar genetic makeup to your family members. As a result of that, their genetic mutations and diseases. So the further you are on that, within that genetic pool, the better off and the healthier off you'll be. So just think about, pets are so great, and obviously we want them to live for a long time and be with us for a long time. So if they're mixed, potentially they will be a lot healthier, just thinking about it from that genetic perspective.
Yeah, that's great to know. Because I guess breeders kind of like market a different idea to you when they sell dogs, because whenever like you buying a dog, not necessarily getting it from a shelter, you pay much more for a pure breed rather than a mix.
You definitely do. And just thinking about, the breeders and, those dogs just, constantly being in that situation where they have to make new dogs, not necessarily healthy. And
Right.
again, I have questions in terms of the ethical aspect of things when it comes to purebreds.
Right. Yeah. Well, I just love talking to you.
Me too.
I love learning all these new things. Because like we had that conversation last week, right? An hour and a half, and it's pretty much the same conversation, but I learned new things already today. So yeah, that's amazing, and I'm hoping that whoever's watching this video, this interview, would also learn something new for them. So how can people contact you? How can someone connect with you? Like, what services do you provide?
I am pretty big on social media, on Instagram and on Facebook. One of my big passions is education. So, obviously I am a professor at a college here in Colorado Springs, and I love educating my students, and I just love educating you guys. So, the first step to contact me or to learn a little bit more as to what I do is to just follow me on social media. And then I do obviously provide services. So we'll link my website and my social media accounts, to this video. And you're more than welcome to go on my website and schedule a consultation if anything that, Karyna and I have talked about today not necessarily even resonated, but if you have any chronic conditions that you've been dealing with for a while, I would love to help you. So to schedule that consultation, and initially to set up the first full consultation, I always do 15-minute free consultations. It's really important actually, so that I learn briefly about your health and see if I can help, first of all, right? And then you learn about my approach and see if that fits you. So I know, like, I've had some patients who are like, I'm familiar with your services. It's fine. We don't have to schedule that free consultation, but I'm really big on still scheduling that 15-minute consultation, because I really want to make sure that we're stepping into this relationship mutually, with mutual understanding of how long it might take, right? What may be required of you, what may be required of me. Because it is a journey, right? It's not a magic pill. Functional medicine is not a magic pill. It does take time. And, some of my patients get better within a month and then, continue to optimize their health. Other patients, it takes a few months, right? Because it all depends on the condition that you've been dealing with and how long you've been dealing with it, and also the genetic makeup. So I just want to make sure that the patient is on board with me and is willing to be patient within, their healing journey. So yes, I think, between the Instagram, and you can go on my website and set up that free 15-minute consultation. And I do try to be very active on Instagram and Facebook as well to educate you guys on.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I love the approach with a free consultation where you can understand if you actually can help a person. So yeah, definitely.
I do want to add one very important aspect when you're especially looking for a functional medicine provider to help you with your health. I find it incredibly important to work with a provider who has the qualifications, right? So, for example, I went to school for my doctorate of chiropractic degrees, which was 4 years. Before that, I received my bachelor's degree in philosophy with pre-med classes, which was another 4 years. After that, I also received my master's degree in functional medicine and nutrition, which was another 3 years. So as you can see, right, I have a very good foundation of medicine, of understanding how your body works, right? That someone who has a certification, like a 6-month certification, for example, in holistic medicine will not have, right? Because it takes years to study and then restudy and repeat that information. So when you're working with someone who is looking into your blood work, working with your diet, just make sure that it is a provider who has background, who has a very strong background, who has education in the medical field. Super, super important, because then you know that, yes, they definitely know what they are doing because they've studied this for anywhere from 4 to 8 to 10 years. Super, super important, guys, right? Because the last thing you want to do is pay thousands, hundreds of dollars to thousands of dollars to someone who hasn't even put in the time and their life into, the education to really study your cells, your body, and provide you with the best care they can. The other thing that I wanted to mention is the reason why I don't like the term alternative medicine, right? Because I find that a lot of patients come to me after having seen many providers and they're like, okay, I'm at a loss. I don't know what else to do. No one can help me. But it really should be just the completely opposite, right? I would love it, and I strongly believe that the health of the world, especially the health of the United States, the people of the United States would change for the better if they approached their health from the fundamental aspects of health first, right? Let's get the habits good. Let's look into your blood work. Let's see what nutrients, what hormones are lacking, and if it is, if I see any red flags upon the physical exam on the labs, then I refer right away, right, to a GI provider, to a cardiologist. But starting And sometimes you do have to start with, high force interventions, such as if you have appendicitis or like high blood pressure. But I would love it if more people, when they're just starting to feel off, would reach out to functional medicine providers, because then, they're just starting to see a little rash. I actually had a patient like that, who's completely on maintenance care with me now, but she was having a rash. She was giving like all of these steroid creams that wouldn't help, and the rash would come back. And finally, she was offered steroid medications, and she didn't really want to take those because of the side effects. And she does have a sensitive body. Upon looking at her blood work, there were significant deficiencies. Fixed the deficiencies, worked on the diet, rashes disappeared. That's it, gone. Didn't have to take a steroid medication, right? So just really important to, whenever you have these first signs, symptoms, kind of like bells, ringing bells from your body that, hey, something is off, go in and see a provider, and ideally someone who has education in functional medicine, right? Some medical doctors have certifications in functional medicine. Many different, naturopathic doctors, chiropractic doctors have degrees in functional medicine. So definitely something to look into. And the reason why I don't like the term alternative medicine is because I think that alternative is when you get to the state where it's like, okay, there's nothing else for you to do than, or there's no other treatment for you than this medication. I feel like medication should truly be alternative and like establishing good fundamentals of health and nutrition should be the primary. And if our world functioned that way, if our world of medicine functioned that way, a lot more people would have been healthier. Last thing, if you want to learn a little bit more as to what the difference is between functional medicine, allopathic medicine, read the book Good Energy. She does a great job explaining the difference. And she is Good Energy by Katie Means. She's actually a medical doctor who left the world of allopathic medicine and opened her own functional medicine practice. And she tells you exactly how it works and why she left.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming. Guys, if you have any questions, if you want to ask something, you want to comment, maybe something else we should have discussed, we can always create a different video. So please comment down below, and we'll link all Maria's information in the description under this video. And yeah, it was awesome to have you here.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Please comment with any questions. We'll be very happy to answer your questions. And there's just so much more that I can talk about pertaining to functional medicine, like hormones, mental health in terms of neurotransmitters, and just different steps of the healing process of functional medicine, that if you guys are interested in any of that, just also comment below, and we would love to explore more topics of that matter.
Yep. Awesome. All right. And we'll see you in the next videos. Bye-bye.
Yes, bye.